All right, welcome into Social Distillation, the submarine still the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight under your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we are back. I am back from Europe, so I might give an update. I will do that at the end. For those that are just coming to the channel, we'll get to the meat and potatoes, which Heath's going to bring up the Superman movie. But it leads into something that this shirt is relevant for, which
hmm
is the end child trafficking rings called the Benevolent Savages. Uh, Remy
No, the movie
Adelecki's.
has nothing to do with that, but there is a segue here.
Yeah, so of course, as of the latest news cycle, we will be diving into Epstein stuff.
Again,
Again,
still.
again. It's
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if it's an opinion you haven't heard, but I have an opinion that I haven't heard. So we'll go into that as well.
Okay.
But we're gonna start with the Superman stuff because you said it leads right into the other.
Yeah. Well, I went into this now, granted, couple of caveats here. One, I'm the oddball kid whose favorite superhero was not Batman. You're supposed to like Batman when you're a kid because he's cool. Superman is a goody two shoes.
Oh no, my favorite was Daredevil.
Yeah, that's a lot of people um, who are oddballs. Because if you're Marvel, you're supposed to like Spider-Man. That's the one the kids like. He's the
Hmm.
cool one. But if you're an oddball, then you like Daredevil because he is as Miller described it when he was talking when Frank Miller took over and was writing it. He loved Daredevil because he was defined not by his ability but by what he lacked,
Hmm.
his disability, and he found that very interesting,
His
which is
perseverance, that was the whole point of his character.
exactly
In
which
fact, the
we're
first comic I saw with him was called Daredevil's Bad Day.
which I'm going to get to because the big gripe about Superman is he's too perfect, he's too powerful, he's too
Which has
so
been my gripe in the past. Yeah.
that makes him boring. Well, to me, that's like saying, oh, no, you shouldn't deadlift because you'll hurt your back. No, you shouldn't deadlift wrong or you'll hurt your back. Um, I think if you want good Superman stories in a condensed form, I thought the late 90s, early 2000s DC animation, well, actually going back to the early 90s and Batman, the animated series, was some of the best comic book storytelling ever. Um, in book or other media form. So Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, and then Justice League and Justice League Unlimited all had very good, very compelling Superman stories that made Superman interesting without doing what Snyder did, which was deconstruct him and make him darker, literally make him darker. Just pull up a picture of the Superman costume through the years, through the movies, and it is a very dark blue. I'm wearing the classic Superman t-shirt, which is the classic colors, which are bright, because that is one of the things that makes Superman interesting. And one of the reasons I wanted the Snyderverse to work, but I knew it couldn't after watching Man of Steel, because I actually think the best Superman and Batman stories are the Superman and Batman stories because they're literally day and night. I don't remember who it was that described Metropolis and Gotham. Metropolis is New York City during the daytime. Gotham is New York City at night.
Hmm.
And this was back in the day when New York City was quite rough, especially at night. And you see that again going back to the 90s animated series, they have a very similar um art style. They both lean heavily into Art Deco to make kind of a retro look, but the Batman animated series is all shades of gray. It's lots of dark. Both his suit and the backgrounds, even when you're inside, it is very film noir. They use a lot of shading to make it look like the lighting of a film noir movie. And then Superman, everything is bright. It's almost always in the daytime. The colors are all bright. It's symbolism, but it is also substance, which is what makes it work and why the Snyderverse didn't work. So, one of the complaints I've heard about this movie is that it starts in the middle. It starts, and a lot of the plot is driven by things that happened off screen before the movie starts. So if you've seen the trailers, you've seen Superman come smashing into the snow and call Crypto because he's beat the heck up and he needs Crypto to drag him off to the Fortress of Solitude so he can heal. I like that. One of my gripes about a lot of the superhero movies lately has been we don't need origin stories for these people. In fact, it's very similar to what um, Sony Marvel did with Spider-Man that I thought was clever, which was it's not mature Peter Parker. He's still high school Peter Parker, but we don't need to see him being bitten by the spider. We've
Hmm.
already seen that. We saw that in Sam Raimi's movie, right? And then we saw it again with the rebooted Holland movies. Everybody knows who Spider-Man is and how he got his powers. My mom knows who Superman is. Okay? You don't need the origin of, we don't need to spend time doing that. Likewise, when I finally got around to watching Man of Steel, we I was like, you know what? I want to see what this is all about. I want to see if it's as bad as people say. And we feel like watching a movie. So I went to Redbox, I grabbed it, and we sat, we watched it. Me and my wife griped all the way through it. And my wife is very normy when it comes to this kind of stuff. But even she could see, I know who Superman is, and that's not Superman. Because as a kid, she watched uh, Dean Cain and what was the hot
Hmm.
chick?
Uh, uh,
Uh,
Lois and Clark.
yeah,
No,
Adventures of Lois and Clark. I'm trying
yeah,
to remember
yeah.
the actresses. Terry Hatcher, Dean Cain and Terry
Oh, Terry
Hatcher,
Hatcher.
who were,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
perfect in those roles. And so she knew who Superman is supposed to be. And her critique of Man of Steel was the same as mine. That was a very great action alien invasion sci-fi movie. But I don't know who that guy in the blue suit was because he wasn't Superman.
Hmm.
What made this movie, I I said I loved it when she asked if I liked it. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I wouldn't even call it great. I would just call it really good. If you've watched any of the videos out there of Drinker, Nerdrotic, and the people in that sphere, I agree with about half of the criticisms. The other half, I would say a quarter of them, I know I completely disagree, and a quarter I'm like, okay, yeah, I see your point, but you're going too far with it. So it's not a perfect movie, but the reason I loved it is because the main thing was the main thing, which is Superman was Superman.
Hmm.
So as an example, in Nerdrotic's review of it, he put up like a 20-minute review, which is very spoilery, so don't watch it if you want to watch the movie. And he goes into plot details. And so just one little one, which doesn't really spoil anything, because again, if you've seen the trailer, you've basically seen this, which is the movie opens with Superman with just three sentences of exposition, of setting the stage for this world. And the last one is for the first time in his life, Superman lost a fight. Okay. And so once he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, and you've seen the robots in some of the trailers, and they fix him up. And Gary Nerdrotic, his critique was, and he used these. I don't know if you've seen this clip of um the South Park guys, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They gave this lecture at a theater college about storytelling and story writing,
Hmm.
and it's a great example of how not to do it and how to do it. And their phrasing was "and then." You
Hmm.
should never have beats in a story that are and then and then, because that's boring, and it makes it more difficult to suspend disbelief. So as I don't remember which one of them said it, instead of "and then," between the beats of your story should be "therefore," but you know,
Hmm.
this happens, but then this happens. Therefore, this has to happen. So that way it flows naturally. If you've watched our Wheel of Time stuff, even where we nitpick with Robert George's storytelling, we still see how it flows from a character perspective and a world perspective.
The greatest example of that is Varen,
Yes.
where you're just like, you know something's up, and there's a lot of and this and that and therefore this
Hmm.
and this is happening because, and you're like, I don't know what to do with all of this, and then it comes to a head in her
Yeah, and
discussion
then
with
there's a
Egwene,
big climactic
and it's not
for her
even,
character reveal,
yeah,
and it's,
and
oh
it's
my
not even
gosh.
an expose. It's just, here's information.
Hmm.
This is what I've been working on my whole life,
Yeah,
and
this is my life's work, and it's such a simple, quiet scene, and it punches you right in the gut.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of scenes like that
And
in
if you
this
don't
movie,
know
which
what
is
I'm
why I
talking
like it.
about or we're talking about,
Hmm.
there's
Yeah,
14 books for
this
you to
this is
read.
why
That's your
we're
homework.
being cryptic,
Mhm.
because you don't want that moment spoiled because it's magnificent.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway,
I kind of want to, I know kind of what you want to talk about, and I wanted to kind of pull you in that
well,
direction.
let me finish this point, because this gets to the main thing, is the main thing, which is that in his critique, Gary said that that was an and then moment, but it wasn't. Okay, so Superman gets his butt kicked. He goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, and then he goes back to Metropolis to fight, to continue this fight that he just lost, because the plot needs him to. No, it doesn't. Gunn actually did something that I didn't think Hollywood was capable of doing anymore, which is he showed instead of told. Superman gets healed, and he gets up to go back, and the head robot says, "But sir, you're only 83% uh, rejuvenated, and you lost at 100%." Yeah, but that guy is still there, and Metropolis is in danger. That's not an and then. That is showing you who Superman is. And more importantly, what this movie gets right, especially as it goes on, as it develops, and as you see, is ultimately where Snyder failed is because he made a Superman movie. This is why I said Superman and Batman are best. The best stories are when they're together, because Bruce Wayne died in that alleyway that night with his parents. Bruce Wayne as an adult, that's the alter ego. He's Batman. He
Mhm.
became Batman because of that trauma. Superman is the alter ego. Clark Kent is who he really is. That's what makes them so interesting. That what makes them different but similar, and why they make such good yin and yang characters when they're together, is because that is who he was raised to be.
Yeah, and this is actually one of the shortfalls of Jungian psychology, is everybody talks about his phrasing of the shadow self and the inability to address the shadow self. No, it's actually the internal self. We have good parts that we don't let come out either. And Superman is a shadow self of Clark Kent. It's just a good part. The shadow is not a bad thing. It's the hidden thing. And that's, I think, where people misinterpret it, the Jungian psychology, and maybe Jung himself, is it doesn't have to be a dark part of you. It has to be a hidden part of you.
It is also something that is, I think this was Chuck Dixon who I heard say this a while ago, and I don't remember in reference to what movie. I think it may have been around the time it was announced that Gunn was taking over. And I saw him on one of the channels. And Chuck Dixon, uh, if you're just a casual comic fan, you would know him from his primary creation, which he is the creator of Bane, the character Bane, which is the
Which is
Batman
actually a
villain that,
pretty cool villain. Yeah.
yeah, Batman villain that broke his back. It was played by Hardy in the third Nolan movie. Um, and he made a good point that where Superman writers go wrong is that Superman is not inspirational, and he's not supposed to be. He is aspirational. And the difference there is that, one, Superman can't inspire you because he's an alien with superpowers. You can't be that. Okay. And the analogy I thought of is, we have talked before about Ronnie Coleman, and um, what you can learn from him. he he is a figure that could be aspirational if you want to get fit, if you want to lift, if you want to get bigger, but he shouldn't be inspirational because you shouldn't want to mimic what he did because look what he did to himself in
Well, he should be
purpose of
inspirational
his
if you have the
goals.
same goal. If your goal is health, he should not be inspirational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean, this is the extreme athletes, and this is the superhero mentality too. Realistically, they put their life on the line to save the
mhm,
world or do their thing, right? Uh,
yes.
is if you this has been done, and there's a lot of controversy around it, but it has been repeated with Olympic athletes and bodybuilders. If you could get the ultimate goal, gold medal, Mr. Olympia, whatever that represents for your sport, but you will die in 2 years, would you still do it? A very large chunk of them, and it's not as big as the original study said, but it's a lot bigger than zero. Okay,
Go
it's a lot bigger than the suicide rate. It's a lot bigger than the OD rate. It's a lot bigger than a lot of negative impact coping mechanisms that they would do the thing to get that
mhm.
high status and then die.
Go watch the clip of Kurt Angle on Joe Rogan talking about how he won his gold medal match literally with a broken neck. He was just pumped up. He was just
Mm-hmm.
injected full of painkillers so that he wouldn't feel it.
Well, the pitcher that gets the cortisone shot so he could go back out there, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
tears his
Yeah.
elbow apart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So because Gunn did such a good job, despite all of the problems of the main thing being the main thing, I had a thought that I hadn't had before about when Superman is done well, why he's good and why it matters uh, as quality storytelling, as a storytelling that you can learn from, which is what we've been talking about the past several weeks with our Watt talks, is Superman is Office Space. What is the key point of Office Space is the idea of now kids, this will sound funny to you because what's $1 million now, but this was made in the late 90s when $1 million was actual money. And there's this thought exercise of what would you do with $1 million? All right, what would you do with your life? Not what would you do with your money, but if you had $1 million in the bank, basically, if money wasn't an option, what would you do with your life? And that is
Wasn't a
supposed,
barrier.
yes, that is
I mean,
supposed
it
to
is.
give
It's
you
there. It's an
direction.
option. Yeah.
Yeah, that is supposed to give you a direction for your life. What would you do if money wasn't an option? Well, that is in essence what the story of Superman is. If you had ultimate physical power,
Hmm.
what would you do with it?
I've never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Well, Superman is the ultimate Boy Scout. He was raised in Smallville, Kansas. Okay. He was raised in flyover country by, a good old boy and a good old girl. And they raised him, they done raised him up right. And
Basically,
they,
Jack and Diane, right?
exactly. And so he has the ultimate power and he strives to do the most good with it. Now, contrast that with who is his arch villain? Now, now Superman again is aspirational because he can't be inspirational because he is an alien with superpowers. Okay, this is not something that could happen. His arch enemy is conceivably someone you could be. He is just highly intelligent, but also more importantly, highly driven. And what does he do with those incredible abilities? As much evil as he possibly can, so long as it benefits him personally, but then also a good thing that Gunn really does well in this movie is showcasing the narcissistic delusion of, yeah, but I'm really doing this for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if I'm not mistaken, isn't narcissism one of the dark tetrad, or is
Yes.
it phrased differently? I can't
No, no, no.
remember
Yeah,
what the
it's
technical
cluster
terms are.
B. Yeah, cluster B
Okay.
personality disorder. Yeah, this is where it gets complicated. But uh, as we're segueing over to Lex Luthor, when you first started this and you asked, and I said Daredevil was my favorite, and you said the word Marvel, I was like, yeah, that is my favorite Marvel superhero. And I was like, I started racking my brain with DC, and I was like, I can't think of my favorite DC superhero. So I went through a list of 250 characters of DC while you were talking, and Arrow comes up, which I like the FX Netflix
Hmm.
adaptation to Arrow until it just kept going and going and going. And Constantine was really cool.
Hmm.
But other than that, DC to me had always been blah, except I was looking at these names and I was like, but the thing DC did better than Marvel was the villains. DC had fun with the villains.
Hmm.
That's why actually I love some of the Batman movies, not because of my like for Batman, but because the Joker's freaking awesome.
Hmm.
That's why there's so many people that flock to him as an inspiration online because, yeah, they're misled and they're misguided in their thoughts about what he represents, but he is pretty freaking cool. Penguin, Riddler, all of
Hmm.
those Batman villains. Gosh, yeah, there were just
The
so many. I
Batman
was.
Rogues Gallery is great.
Mhm.
As far as
In fact, the villains were so popular, they made Suicide Squad movies and comics because they were cashing in on the fact that everybody loved DC villains.
mhm,
And Lex Luthor's a great example of that because he is fleshed out in a way that is something we all can identify with. Is this mastermind that has a shit ton of money and is willing to do whatever it takes for himself and gaslight you into thinking it's good for humanity. And
mhm.
that's something that we're all afraid of, and actually we live it as we're going to segue later. And that's what I think DC did better than Marvel was the villains. They played with the villains, but they also had reality behind them.
Yeah, as far as the Marvel villains go, I think Magneto is really the only really compelling villain
Well,
because you
Marvel
can
just
see how
became
he's a
everything's a
hero in his
god
own story.
complex. So
That too.
yeah.
That too. And anyway, but on to Luther and why this matters is um
Well, do you want me to go through the tetrad?
yeah, but briefly, I just realized there's also a lesser character in the DC universe that is in this movie is Mr. Terrific, and he's a Tony Stark kind of guy. So you have this contrast between someone who is also really smart and really technically capable, and he's using his abilities to do good.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this direct contrast in the movie itself, but Luther is much more so. Depending on which backstory you look at, is he's literally the most intelligent human being ever. And in the movie, he compares himself to guys like Newton and Einstein and Galileo, but I'm even better than them.
Mm-hmm. Side note, another good movie that is worth watching, The Amateur. Speaking of highly intelligent characters, that's a good movie. Just throwing that in there, plug. I watched it on the plane. Really good. Okay, but back to Luther. So high intelligence is one thing. The other things that are accompanying it is
Hmm.
the other part of it. And so you contrasted two people there. Now, this Mr. Terrific, by his name, I would say he's probably very narcissistic. But that's not an evil thing. Narcissism is not an evil thing. It
Hmm.
can result in evil activities, but it's not an evil thing. So when we look at what Heath mentioned was the dark tetrad, these are cluster B personality disorders, and the narcissism is probably the least harmful one of them because it's easy to spot, first of all, and it's basically a need for external validation, but from a perspective that's blind in that you feel like you deserve it. Now, that actually, if that was Luther's only problem, that's not a big problem because he is highly intelligent and highly accomplished. So if the accomplishment matches the praise, you could still be narcissistic, but you can be productive. So
I brought
that
up
that
Tony Stark earlier. That's probably the
Mhm.
most famous now because of the MCU uh, uh, fictional example of he never really loses the narcissism that he has at the very beginning of Iron Man 1, but because of what happens to him along the way, he's able to direct it into something positive.
Well, and not only that, as an external source of that validation, say I'm dealing with a narcissist that needs my validation, I just align my validation with what's good. And they will behave in a way that's good because that's where they get the validation from. So a pure just narcissist is not the most horrible thing. Annoying, yes, because you always have to keep feeding their their need for that, which is where relationships make become difficult because usually you get a narcissist and a codependent, and that codependent's spending all their emotional energy feeding that need. But as far as just their behaviors in general, most of your actors, your performing arts, everything, they have a lot of that because that's why they do what they do, because they get that attention. Comedians, they used comedy to get attention from their parents, and now they use it to get attention from everybody. So yeah, it has positive and negative. So this is go back to some of our episodes on uh all of these personality traits typically have a positive benefit. Otherwise, they wouldn't have existed. So narcissism is the first one. Uh we'll do the next easiest, the low-hanging fruit, psychopathy. Psychopathy typically actually is accompanied by brain lesions in parts of the brain that don't allow you to basically feel other people's feelings, which is what we call empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's theory of mind and there's empathy. There's knowing other people's feelings, but then there's also feeling other people's feelings. And they lack the ability to feel that, but also that overlaps with a lack of impulse control. So we look at someone like Ted Bundy as a great example. He would, and this kind of the story of his life, would meet a woman or see a woman or something, and he would lack the impulse control to not take it across the line. And then when they would
Hmm.
panic, his impulse was to panic as well, and he would kill them. And
That's curious. I had forgotten that part about the psychopathy, and this is as we often say with Robert Jordan. I wonder if this was intentional or just intuitive on the part of Gunn as the director and Nicholas Hoult play, who I think is a great one of the great young actors we've got nowadays, and there aren't that many. Plays Luther and plays him very well. As the movie goes on, especially once you get into the third act and Luther's plans start to get thwarted, he starts to become more unhinged. In the first two acts,
Mhm.
about the first two-thirds of the movie, Nicholas Hoult plays him very subdued, very like darkly focused.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of, he doesn't raise his voice very often, and when he does, he's not yelling and screaming. He's just being firm with someone because by golly, he's Lex Luthor and he expects you to do what he says. It's as his plans start to become thwarted, then he starts to, froth at the mouth, kind of chew up the scenery.
Yeah, and this is one of the misconceptions about psychopaths. Everybody talks about them being unfeeling. They're not unfeeling. They only know their own feelings.
Mm,
And so they're actually acting on their feelings when they do something bad. So back to Ted Bundy. He acted on his feeling of lust, right? It was not very well received. So he acted on his feeling of anger. And then he acted on his feeling of panic, of, oh my God, I'm going to get caught. What's going to happen to me? And so he would step across boundaries, get angry, and commit horrific acts because of it. And then his genius would come out and he would cover it up. And that's why he went for so long. And that's why he was a serial killer, not just a murder rapist, right? So he went through the whole thing, and it was because he was actually over emotional with his own feelings and unable to read the feelings of others or even care about the feelings of others. That's probably a better way of saying it. Care about the other feelings of others, including his future self. And this is something Jordan Peterson goes into, is one of the problems with psychopaths is your future self is actually another person. And so their actions are in the moment, and they do not think ahead to what's going to happen to them later until it's too late. And now he was smart enough to cover up his tracks a lot of the time, but most just commit a horrific crime and end up in jail right away. So there's psychopathy. Then we have Machiavellianism, which I put up the prints just for that. Machiavellianism is the cold, calculated manipulation. So these all overlap, right?
Hmm.
So I am, if I'm a pure Machiavellian and I'm not too much overlapped with the other two, I am able to coldly calculate what's best for me. And this is probably Lex Luthor more without having to have the hang up of how I feel other people's feelings. Or even with a pure Machiavellian, how I look in the process, which would be the narcissism coming in, right? So they
And
can come in
again,
and calculate.
as pointing out again, in small doses, these traits aren't inherently bad. It's what you do with them, because I've
Mhm.
used before my pain management doctor as an example of, he is coldly calculating, and there's probably a touch of psychopathy there because he's
Psychopaths
not
are
as worried
surgeons.
about my
Surgeons
feelings.
are
Yep.
high in psychopathy. Yeah.
Yeah. So um he is able to calculate, okay, what is the best long-term plan, and he is willing and able to subject me to fairly significant temporary pain in order to give me 6 to 8 months of long-term relief from that pain. It's then okay, but then do you keep going with that? And then you end up in Lex Luthor territory.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the last one, and this is the one that doesn't, this is the only one that doesn't check the box of what can be positive about this. Mm, we could probably do some mental gymnastics to find some good places for it, but it's sadism.
Is this
Say
is this the
the
fourth one?
fourth one,
Because
the
it
one
used to
they
be the
added.
Dark
Yeah.
Triad.
Yeah. It
Okay.
used to be the triad, now it's the tetrad. And this is the one that doesn't check a box very easily of what it is useful for humanity for. Although maybe there is a place in tribal warfare where these people were needed to keep your tribe alive. But these are the people that enjoy causing pain and suffering to other people. And that's this is the one that I have trouble not as I've argued for positive psychopathy, positive narcissism, positive Machiavellian, positive even by borderline personality and all of those. I can't argue for a positive sadism because this is actually getting pleasure from causing other people pain. And that could be emotional pain, that could be financial pain, that could be physical pain, all of it. It is just ruining people's lives or causing suffering and getting a kick out of it, getting a high out of it. And those are sadists.
The only thing that pops into my mind of where you could spin a positive here is violent combative sports. But you're not,
No,
unless you are a real sadist psychopath, you're not actually taking pleasure in the hurting the other guy. It's in the achieving the victory. That's
mm-hmm.
what matters. And yes, I'm
No,
going to
yeah,
have to
because
cause that other
this is
guy
where I'd
pain to
argue with
do
that
it.
point because a sadist would break the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it doesn't really fit,
Now they
because
might do well in those sports because they're
yes.
willing to do what it takes. But I mean, how does that better humanity, right? Not maybe in the Roman days when the crowd loved when you tortured your opponent,
Mm-hmm.
right? That kind of thing. But yeah, just from a survival standpoint, the only thing I can think of is there. I'm trying not. I'm trying to say this the right way before we get clipped on this. There are benefits to information gathering from things like torture, and the problem is that's a very narrow field that shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
survive the gene pool realistically.
And I suspect the reason that has survived the gene pool is because if you are strong in that trait, you are probably going to achieve a degree of success over other people
Yeah,
and thus
that's
perpetuate
probably
that
more the
gene.
thing. Yeah, it was an individual survival versus a group survival mechanism, which
Yeah.
we have both. We have all of it.
Yeah.
So
And you see that in the movie, because not only does he do bad things, he sometimes does them for very petty reasons. Like oh, you slighted me in this very inconsequential way. Well, I can't let that stand. But it doesn't matter. Someone said something about you online. Yeah, but I can't let that stand. I'm going to hurt you,
Hmm.
like way out of proportion to whatever you did to me.
Hmm.
And
See, that
you
sounds a little bit more Machiavellian because they're self-justifying why they hurt somebody
mm,
instead of just the pure pleasure of it being. Now, of course, overlap. They may justify it,
yeah.
but also take pleasure in it. So that's the problem with these character traits is when you talk about there are what we call the dark triad where they have all three and it's pretty strong, but the overlap between psychopathy and narcissism is pretty easy because you're only thinking about yourself. Uh, Machiavellianism, you're just being really smart about it, realistically. So yeah, it's the overlap is strong between all of them, but most people shift, and I think Lex Luthor probably would shift to the Machiavellian
Mhm.
part of it because you said he justifies everything with the greater good of humanity, which is
Yes.
actually usually a manipulative tactic.
Yeah, the Machiavellian and the narcissism, especially in this movie, but in general, from the various amounts of Superman content I've consumed, those are the two biggies for him. And I assume with different Tetrad people, you know, one or more of these squares are going to be more pronounced than in others. But it's having all four and taking acting upon all four to excess is what makes this, if I'm translating into amateur psychologist speak, that's what makes it dangerous. And well, let's
Well, it makes it dangerous because when you're internally focused, which all of them are,
mhm,
then you're able and you're highly intelligent. So that there's two things going with Lex Luthor here. You are able to come up with justifications for your actions when they're very self-centered. Whereas if you actually have a high degree of empathy and ability to read what your actions are doing to others, true compassion, not just empathy, true compassion, you lose the ability to self-justify because then you enter a stage of cognitive dissonance, which is the pain that accompanies making the wrong decisions for your goals.
all right. So in summation, go see it if you like fun, actiony, adventure-y, fantasy, sci-fi-ish things, but that also have heart. I think you'll really enjoy this movie. I was trying to remember when the last time I saw a movie in the theater and thought, I want to see that again. Like immediately thought, I want to see that again. Because movie tickets are so stupidly expensive now and things end up on streaming so quick, it's hard to justify. And I think Top Gun Maverick and Godzilla Minus One were the last movies I can think of that I thought, oh, I really want to see that again.
Watch
And
The Amateur. That's good.
it's got Fishburne and Malik in it, and I
Mhm.
think they're both really good. So I'd wanted to see it, and I haven't gotten around to it. But before the movie was even over, I was thinking, because again, I went in with pretty low expectations, and I went by myself because my wife said she wasn't interested, and I thought she would like this, and that gives me an excuse to come see it. So this weekend, I'm probably going to drag her to it to see it again, and maybe I'll catch some things that I didn't. But that made me think of something that segues us into the sad real worldness here, which is that what you were talking about with Luther and with the Dark Tetrad and those personality types in general. I think one of the things that lets someone fall into the the excess of those personality types is a lack of balance from outside. So
Mm.
one of the better scenes in the movie is when is between Lois and Clark, where Lois is challenging him on something. Yeah, I know you're trying to do the right thing, but you need to think these things through because what about this? What about that? Did you think about this ramification? you need that pushback. You need that give and take. You need those people that will say, well, hey, wait a minute. Maybe you're going a little, I understand why you're doing that, but maybe you're going a little too far with it. Because he's so domineering and because he's so narcissistic, he surrounds himself with sycophants, basically. Luther is the kind of person with no pushback. This is why I think the comparisons that a lot of people make to Musk as the real world Lex Luthor are wrong, because you can worry that he spends too much time on his own platform, but the fact that Elon Musk will read and respond to people on X who criticize him, that's a big deal. That is what I think keeps him as someone who is unique versus a lot of other examples we have of highly intelligent, highly capable, but also narcissistic and Machiavellian types.
Bill Gates, Zuckerberg.
Like
Yeah.
the people who have been associated with Epstein.
Hmm.
And this is something I was talking about with my brother a while back of I think the obsession with turning it into a vast conspiracy, um, especially by the those who want to use this. Yeah, there's a connection, but I don't know how strong it is to Mossad through Ghislaine Maxwell.
Hmm.
Of so he was a Mossad agent. I mean, maybe, but my concern is he didn't have to be. He could have just been networking with like-minded people.
Hmm.
All of these people have way too much power, way too much money, and way too little accountability.
Well, we saw this. COVID is a great example. Everybody's like, oh, there's this vast conspiracy to take over the world with COVID. It was like, no, maybe there were just a lot of entities, including people and organizations, that saw an advantage that said, hey, this thing is happening. Let's freaking use it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, that's how smart people work. You know,
Well, and of course, Governor Gavin Newsom can go to the French Laundry and have a big party where we're not following the rules. I'm making what everyone else follow because we're important. We're saving the state. We're saving the world. So of course we are allowed to do this while I send freaking sheriff's boats and choppers out after a lone paddle boarder.
yeah, it
That
is
literally
John
happened.
Kerry. Well, of course my plane has great emissions, but look at the work I'm doing to reduce emissions worldwide.
And this is why, from the perspective of the right, and even though I don't really consider myself part of the MAGA movement, it is from the mostly from the right, and so I understand it and listen to a lot of the people who have talked about it since 2015. This is why this matters to them. It in a lot of ways it's like the wall. If you go way back to one of our first episodes, I talked about why the wall mattered to the base and why that's a big effing deal, because the wall was symbolism and substance, because it was a tangible barrier that subsequent administrations and politicians couldn't get around. They would literally have to go to the effort to tear it down in order to bring us back to the current status quo.
Hmm.
That is why the wall mattered. Well, same thing with Epstein. You campaigned on draining the swamp 3 times, especially this second time after what happened to you in the 2020 election. You campaigned on draining the swamp. Epstein is the ultimate symbol of the swamp because one, it triggers that reflexive masculine, proper masculine desire
To
to
protect children.
protect women and children first. Women and
Hmm.
children go on the Titanic lifeboats first because they're women and children. And by golly, that's what men do. Okay. One, so those were the victims, but then also the alleged perpetrators were people who are doing all of these awful things as well. It is, again, everybody fixated on the F bomb from Musk because it was funny and it's, oh my gosh, a billionaire is not supposed to say that. And then,
Trump said it about the Israel Iran
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he dropped one too.
That was
But
one of the best lines of the year. I'm sorry.
but back to, but this was back during the even before he officially joined Trump. I mean,
Mm,
when I don't even
yeah, I
remember, it was
remember what
some
you're
big
talking about.
business
Yeah.
conference, and he was going after specifically Iger and Disney of
It was the
the
advertisers. Remember, the
yes,
advertisers wouldn't advertise on X, and he said, "Well, f them." Yeah.
and Iger and Disney were a big part of that, and they were leading that cabal. And Musk made the point, I'm tired of people who talk about doing good, but actually do evil. And he used the word evil. And he isn't wrong there. When, the most egregious example sticking with Disney is you thanked the I don't remember what the prefecture state, whatever they call it, Xinjiang, because you did filming there for the live action Mulan. For anyone who doesn't know, Xinjiang is where the large Uyghur population is and where the Uyghur concentration camps are. Where a literal what our own elected officials have called a genocide is happening. And you thanked the government there for letting you film your crappy movie. What is that if not evil? The most obvious example would be late 1930s. Well, even not even the late IBM. Go down the rabbit hole of what IBM did to help facilitate the very bad things that were happening with the Mustache Man. Okay.
Mm.
And we rightfully call that evil of, no, you didn't directly do the act, but you helped and you knew what you were helping. All right. That is all of these people that are alleged to have been associated
I'll,
with Epstein.
I'll give an analogy from my profession. Say I'm training somebody, and I'm making them into the biggest badass person they could be, and I knew they were a hitman.
Mm,
I am making them better at their job purposefully. Do I bear some responsibility for the successful hit that happened next? Yeah, I do.
mm,
I actually I very much do it. If I knew it in the whole process. So yeah, if I made them a killing machine physically and better at their job, and I knew what they did, I'm culpable.
mm-hmm.
I'm an accomplice.
It doesn't help that none of what is being said officially about the Epstein files, quote unquote, makes any sense. So I'll give you an example of something that jumped out at me is the excuse Bondi used. And I kind of said this in passing, I think, um, when it happened, and I never thought I would re-say this because I think he's a slimy plastic used car salesman, but I think we would be so much better off if Trump had stuck to his guns and stuck with Gates
Mm.
as his AG instead of letting him go and going with Bondi. My other thought was, I
I
don't know
think
what
that was a trade.
he probably
I
got
I think that was a
Hegseth
trade
or
to get Hegseth,
RFK.
RFK, Tulsi, all of them in. Yeah.
That yeah, that may have been some wheeling and
And I
dealing
think
behind the
Gates was in
scenes.
on it, speaking of used car salesman. I think he was
Maybe
like, hey, put me up there, and they're going to be so desperate to get me out that they'll give you what you want.
could be, but so she has handled this horribly, in part because she is tangentially MAGA. She's not really part of the movement. So I don't think she understands what I laid out a second ago, which is one, this really matters to Trump's base, and two, why it matters. But one of the things she said in defense of not giving us full transparency was, well, we have to protect the victims. Well, nobody's asking you to release files with victims' names or video with unredacted victims' faces on it. But there was something worse that she said there, because You used the P word earlier, and it's the wrong P word, technically,
Which P word did I
because
use?
pedophilia.
Oh,
Technically, what what we were pretty sure we knew about Epstein and what he was doing was pederasty. They were underage, but they were teenagers. They weren't children.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I will refer you back to something I brought up, and we even played a little clip of it of Weinstein on Brett Weinstein on Modern Wisdom a couple years ago, I think it was. And so you can go if you search Modern Wisdom Weinstein Epstein, you should find the clip because
You're thinking of Eric Weinstein.
okay, it was Eric. It was the
Yeah, yeah.
physicist guy.
Because
Yeah,
he
I
was
always
talking
get
about the time he met him.
he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
talking about the time he met him.
Which was a great bold plan at the time, but is a great plan. He said, "Look, here's my transparency. This is when I met him. This is what we did. This is how it happened." And that's what the people who have been on the plane should be
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
RFK did it.
Um, Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
he said, "Yeah, this is why I met him. This is what we talked about. This is what I
And by the
saw."
way, I was on the plane with him with my kids, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And but Eric Weinstein talked about how creepy the guy was,
Hmm.
and post hoc finding out about him and what he was doing, his analysis of him was, from what I saw of him and the women that were around him, he liked very young women, barely legal but legal. But he was the kind of guy that if your tastes were something else, he'd get it for you. He didn't care.
Hmm.
You know, this is why we segued with Lex Luthor, the villainous example, into this is what this looks like in real life. Of yeah, I'll get you a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old. I don't care. Oh, you want even younger than that? You do you, man. I don't care. I'll make it happen. That's the kind of person he seems to have been, and this is what Bondi.
Which what it takes is going back to it's not this is where the psychopathy comes in. He doesn't care about the emotional damage that this young girl becoming a woman is going to carry for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the
And
thing.
not only does he not care, but he's incapable of caring.
I don't know if she misspoke, or if this was a, or if she meant this. Like technically speaking, I mean, she is a lawyer. She should know that you're saying something technical here. Is that when she talked about why they couldn't release things to protect victims, she used the word children. She said there was video of people performing horrible acts upon children. Whoa, 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 big red flag. Okay. Big red flag, big red sirens of, so you're telling us there's no there, but now all of a sudden you're saying there were children. Before, what we have known of the accuser of the victims that have come forth in these civil trials and talked to lawyers, talked to journalists, they were all young women, some of them teenagers, some of them, 18 to
Underage, but
22.
past puberty.
Some of them were uh 18 or older, but they were held against their will. And that was where the criminality came in. Um, and now all of a sudden you're saying children. But the other big red flag here is, so were all of those videos Epstein? Because I have a hard time believing that. This is again back to where the official story doesn't make any sense. I have a hard time believing you have all of this video, and we know from way back from the reporting, way back when this first started to break, is when the FBI raided his creepy island. Remember where he had that creepy
Mm-hmm.
temple to himself? And it was reported that hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of video were confiscated. And you're telling me that Epstein was the only one in those videos? Bullcrap. So what you should have said is it has led to ongoing investigations. The fact that you didn't say that and you just want everyone to shut up makes me think you're trying to sweep this under the rug.
Well, and they're choosing their words carefully because what's the one phrase you're hearing often is two words from the phrase is no evidence. No evidence is an important way of saying it because it's not saying it didn't happen. It is saying we have no evidence. What Cash and Bongino need to be saying, because they're the ones that the base listens to,
Hmm.
is there's a chance that it was destroyed. And you know what? That would have settled everybody because all of that base that's angry now would have been like, yeah, I could see that happening. Because I actually I don't know why if you're trying to cover something up as something as powerful as the U.S. government, it's not destroyed.
Hmm.
Personally, why would you keep it? Why the you know I see how serial killers get caught. Back to our psychopathy stuff is that they start playing games with the people that are after them because of that little bit of narcissism that's in there, right? They want the recognition, even though they're doing something that will destroy their lives, right?
Hmm.
We have a thing called the Mariana Trench, right? We have explored that less than we've explored space, okay? All you need is a helicopter, drop it there with a brick, and it will never be found. Ever, ever, ever. And when it is, there's nothing you can recover from it, right? So why there is evidence of these things for Cash and Bongino to find would be the only thing I could think of is it's the same thing with the serial killer that they're leaving it to see if somebody can crack it. And if I'm Cash and Dan, I would be just like, hey, there's no evidence. That doesn't mean nothing happened. But there's nothing here for me to use legally. There's nothing here. It could have been destroyed. That's my guess, but it's not here. I can't do anything without it. And if they had taken that approach, the base would have been fine.
Oh, I would add to that they would be fine if the addition with the addition of and
We're trying to find evidence of the destruction.
if we
Yeah.
find evidence of the obstruction of the cover up of the those people will be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
If we can build a case against those people, we will prosecute anyone who helped destroy this evidence and helped cover up these heinous crimes. But again, Bondi said she had video.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in the video, Pam? Who's in the video? So
Well,
I've
okay,
mentioned this
so
before.
let me go down a rabbit hole with this. I was talking about this with somebody earlier, not knowing what we were talking about today. Uh, Everybody says it's because Trump's in the video. That's a possibility. That I mean that the legitimate possibility. The other thing is, okay, so the second part is how many powerful people in this country are in the videos that we would really shake up and cause revolution if we just you took it take down like basically half the Senate or something like that. The other thing is, and this is what I think actually might be the most likely that nobody's thinking about. And this is where I said I haven't heard it from anybody else, but it may be said. So if you've heard it, then chime in. But we kind of already know a little bit of Prince Andrew stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much of the royal family?
Mm.
But even more, I'm throwing names out there, so there is no I have no evidence of anything. I'm just thinking of consequential people. The Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
What if
Mm.
he's in there? Saudi Arabia is the linchpin in all our dealings with the Middle East right now.
Mm.
And we're talking about peace in the Middle East, which is Trump's number one agenda. If the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is in there, you're not releasing shit because you need him. Uh, Name another ally we need right now. Right now, right now.
India.
Yeah.
There are some very wealthy people in India, and we need them to help hold the Western or the Eastern side, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, help keep them in check. Also help keep China in check. Um, uh,
Think of countries like Dubai. The
yeah.
grape culture there with hired women is huge.
Hmm.
And
UAE, Dubai,
mhm,
Qatar, Saudi Arabia. There are extremely wealthy people there who live in a culture that don't treat women the way I talked about proper masculinity
Mhm.
earlier.
You know, Macron, trying to think of other powerful European countries right now. I mean, Trudeau himself, right? There's possible connections with that already between his father and the Rockefellers and all of that. So, yeah, powerful South American countries, Brazil, you know.
Well, I have not heard the international aspect of it brought up, but I have heard people basically say the same thing domestically, which is what you preface this with, is that there are just too many powerful people that are too prominently connected, if not straight up there's evidence of them doing vile things to young women and maybe even children, that it would break the government and the economy. I
Yeah,
have heard
yeah,
that
yeah.
theory put forth of there is just too much damage that will be done to the government and the economy that it will make the 2008 recession, look like the boom of the 80s.
So which lends you to the what's the best next step? Is the best next step to expose everybody and go through that pain?
Hmm.
Or is the next best step to use that evidence to make it stop?
Well, exactly. And that is
Yeah.
the point of the base. And that's the point I ranted about when I was griping about when the primary, short lived as it was, I thought one of the best ads that was put out was by a DeSantis PAC that put out like a 3-minute clip of all the time, of a bunch of times Trump said lock her up and was egging on the crowd in the 2015 2016 campaign, and then after he was elected in his first term, laughing it off and saying, yeah, y'all aren't living in reality, that doesn't really happen. And my point was the fact that you didn't lock her up when there was so much cut and dry black and white evidence, just the evidence that we knew about publicly. The fact that you didn't prosecute Hillary for what she did is why they were able to go after you and lawfare you out of office and then continue to hound you while you were out of office, because no example was ever made. To that point, do you think Epstein was the only Epstein?
Yeah. Well, and also I want to add a fourth to it. Well, I brought up the domestic and the foreign and Trump himself, but let's extend from Trump himself. What if they came across something that is his family? He
Mm,
has a big, powerful family. It may not be him. It could be one of his
yeah,
sons. It could be a cousin. It could be his famously alcoholic brother. It
yeah.
could be anything along those. And he's just, your instinct is to protect your family.
That is something I haven't heard put forth, which is that's I'd forgotten about his somewhat degenerate brother. But uh, um, the idea that Trump is on video or on the list, it's pretty well documented that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago and banned him from ever coming back because he was such a creep.
Mm-hmm.
And not like being a creep, like hitting on his daughter or something. No, he's a creep to the staff, which says a lot to me about Trump, is that the staff complained about him so much that Trump said, no, no, no,
Well, and
you're
that's
out of
one
here and
thing
you're
that
not coming
people
back.
lose sight of is the people who work for him love him.
Hmm.
And that was one of the things I evaluated him on.
Hmm.
Because it's not how you treat your enemies, it's how you treat the people that are doing the things for you, right? Uh, and no, that was a plus on his list. But again, you never know how deep these layers go. This is this whole thing is an onion, right? There's layer
Yeah.
upon layer upon layer upon layer, and it all stinks. And
Well,
I would love more personally. I would just love to. I would love a little bit of trying to think of the right word here. Transparency is the word that comes to mind, but I don't think anybody would trust anything said as transparent.
yeah.
So
Well,
I would love a little bit of better marketing on this, where it's like, okay, we understand, because right now they're saying it's a nothing burger.
Hmm.
That's not good marketing for your base.
And that makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes no
And again,
sense.
oh, a point I have not heard that I wanted to make, and this will be my last point on why you can't sell this. And Trump is the ultimate salesman, and he has previously, up until this point, been very in tune with his own base, except he's completely tone deaf on this one, which is why a lot of people are scratching their heads and getting nervous and going,
Mhm.
is there something, is there a there? Because what he's doing makes no sense. Here's another, this makes no sense. I am old enough to remember the trial of Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood Madam. Do you remember that back in the
Mhm.
90s? All right. So back in the 90s, there was this huge bust of this massive high dollar escort service that was run by a woman named Heidi Fleiss out of Hollywood. And this is, I think, where the quote from Charlie Sheen came from of, you're not paying the prostitute for sex, you're paying her to leave. And because he was one of the people in her little black book. And I can't remember if he was called to testify or not, but the point being, there was a little black book and names were named. And some of those people even had to testify to not be prosecuted for solicitation. There was no black book with Ghislaine Maxwell. That
Mhm.
entire trial, no name
She's
ever
threatening
came
to
out.
she's threatening to expose the black
And
book.
now she's saying, "Hey, I'll talk. I'll name
Hmm.
names." Okay. How do you go through an entire trial of of being an accused, basically a pimp and a sex trafficker, and yet you had no customers?
I can tell you exactly how. The prosecutor was James Coney's daughter, which is the prosecutor is the one who determines what evidence is put forward. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that
Yes.
interesting? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, Heidi Fleiss. It's a line in a Kid Rock song too. It's
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. That's why I thought of it, because it was on the radio yesterday. I was coming back from the gym.
No, but Charlie Sheen is his career was resurrected. And this is where RFK played it right. This is one reason I like him so much, because he is a flawed man.
Mhm.
And he leaned into it in his campaign. He said, "Man, I did a lot of drugs. I lived a lifestyle that was privileged to me as a person with money and fame and good looks and all of those things." Charlie Sheen did the same thing. He was like, "Man, this stuff comes at you."
Mhm.
And I leaned into it. And now I know better. And now he's got a great career. Robert Downey Jr. did the same thing, right? These people that lean into it, they've learned the lesson. The people who deny it, deny it, deny it, deny it, which is what Trump's doing right now, are the ones you don't trust.
Mhm.
You got to lean in. You got to have the messaging right. Be honest with everybody for once. That F bomb he dropped about Israel and Iran, that was a moment of honesty. You could see the frustration in his face when he said, "I just want people to stop dying," when he was on the CNN town hall. There was a moment of honesty. You could see it in his face. But when I hear him give a speech about, "Oh, well, this is just like Russiagate, da da da, this is a Democratic plot," I'm like, no, that's not honest. Give me honesty.
That you segued me into a point I thought of earlier when you were talking about this onion and how do you unravel this. There, something that is actually annoying the base, because this was announced shortly after the Epstein "there's no there" debacle, is they announced they were looking into people who perpetuated the Russiagate hoax. Okay, good, because there is an in again, from what we know publicly, it seems that laws were broken and people need to be prosecuted. But one, that that doesn't mean you can ignore these other people who broke laws. But two, that's not really going to drain the swamp and give your voters, not just your MAGA base, but broadly speaking, your voters, a sense of satisfaction and closure if you're just bringing to account the people that harmed you personally, you also need to bring to account people that were not part of that, but
Well,
did
we would have one
things.
senator and one representative left.
Man, just about. But there have to be some prominent people in these files that you can build a case against without, because I'm
Well, we just saw with Diddy, he got away with it too. He didn't get away, but he got away with the big stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but you at least, yeah, he got away with it, but he didn't get away clean. All right.
Well, he
Everyone
got away
knows,
in a he got away in a way that the people who were above him got away with it.
yes, justice wasn't fully served, but it was at least partially served. One, because he had to go
But you
through the
could say the same
process, and
about
two,
Ghislaine
because of his
Maxwell.
reputation.
Ghislaine Maxwell is taking the hit
Mm,
for everybody else involved.
hmm
Diddy is taking a little hit for everybody else involved.
hmm Even if it ends up in a Diddy style of, oh, to me, I think the one who stinks the most to me is Gates. Um, because of all the reporting around it, because of all the allegations that that's why his wife left him. Um, that's the one that stinks to me the most, and is an incredibly prominent, and people he's not, but because of his philanthropic work, he has this view as apolitical. I'm not taking sides. I'm just trying to help humanity. Again, this is why we started talking about Lex Luthor. I'm
Bill
just trying
Gates.
to help humanity.
We
Mhm.
talked about Matt Gates earlier. Bill
Oh,
Gates.
good
Yeah,
points.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
point. Yeah.
yeah. Let's clarify that.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Bill Gates is probably the most prominent name on the list of accused cohorts that stinks the most to me, and that is who I think, if there is enough smoke there that you think you can find the fire, that is who I think you should build a case against to be the example.
Another name I would probably put on that list is Soros.
Mm.
Where is his connection here? Because he's connected to a lot of things and he does a lot of shit.
That
Yeah.
that I can't remember who I heard mention this, but that is another point. No, I think it was Eric Weinstein again. Back to the modern wisdom is one of the sketchy, many sketchy things about Epstein, even before all this sex trafficking came out, is how do you make his money? Well, that the SEC should be able to figure that out pretty easily. So even these people who aren't connected to the sex crimes, there's probably some financial shenanigans going on here because of how wealthy Epstein appeared to be, and yet no one could figure out where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another there's another layer of
That
the
might be
onion you
one of
can
the
peel
that
back.
might be one of the big reasons that Doge was pushed out.
Mm, could be,
They might have been
could be.
onto something.
So that is an avenue of attack they could take that would conceivably um not just throw the thermonuclear bomb into the middle of everything, but be a more targeted um attack, if you will. And again, bring prominent people who need to be held to account. The whole, I won't say the whole point, but well, yeah, I think you can say the whole point of Trump from the beginning, when he first came down that golden escalator, was I am an outsider and I will hold the powers that be to account. Even his keystone issue, what became his keystone issue, it didn't start out that way, of illegal immigration, is we have had laws on the books for decades. You saw that immediately after he was inaugurated. He just started directing the executive to enforce the freaking law. He didn't have to pass new laws. He just enforced the laws. That is an example of the powers that be not being held to account. You are blatantly ignoring or straight up violating the law. We, the people, are being harmed while you and yours are being enriched, and no one is being held to account.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Doge was all about. That's what it was looking into. This shady, unethical, maybe illegal money laundering scheme that was going on with USAID and other public funds that were being passed through around and around and around to go to these well-connected NGOs and then ultimately back to a political party even. It's all part of the same idea, which is that we, the people, have been kicked in the nuts for decades while the powers that be and their well connected friends get richer and richer, and nobody is being held to account. That is why the Epstein file kerfuffle is not going to go away. And I hope Trump figures that out pretty quick and either, if as you say, or suspect, I think you brought this up, maybe stuff is going on behind the scenes that they just can't talk about. There ought to be a way to reassure people that, look, we are taking what evidence we have and we are following leads and we have open investigations. And when we have a charge to be filed, we will let you know and we will make arrests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess in closing, I would say this is one reason I love, even though I could probably nitpick on some of his social stances, is Vivek Ramaswamy, right? He gave the analogy in his campaign when he was in the primary of cutting out the tumors, right? Where you would go in and he said, what we need is to go in and just cut all of this out. But the problem is we don't know what's fat and what's muscle, what's the bad stuff and what's the good stuff. And we've reached a point where we might end up cutting out some good stuff. We might end up cutting out some muscle. We might end up cutting out some of the things that you need, but it's necessary at this point. Well, they distanced themselves from him. He's running for Ohio governor, which they're backing him. The administration is backing him and all of that, but they have distanced themselves from him. He was supposed to be part of Doge, right? With that same mentality. Well, what if we had a point where we got into this, and Epstein being the base of it, where it wasn't a tumor, it was stage 4 cancer. It has infected your bones, your lymph nodes, everything. It is just so intertwined that there's nothing to cut out without killing the host. And that's where we might be, and that might be the problem. Now, my problem is you have to say that. You have to come out and say, wow, we looked at all this evidence and we could go into an apocalypse, or we can slowly work through this and try some chemotherapy, try some of this, try some of that. Try some interventions that aren't just gutting it out because we will die. Be honest. Be honest with the public. That's what we tried to elect, is a little bit of honesty. And that's what we thought we were getting, because the status quo for government officials is not honesty. Let's just face it. If you back your politician, you are in a state of denial to some point, and you're missing a lot of red flags. Just get rid of those red flags for me and I'm okay. Come out and say, okay, yeah, we promised this, but it's deeper than we thought, and you will lose a lot. You thought inflation was bad. If we go through with this in one foul stroke, you don't know what bad is. That's what they need to say. And I think I would be happy with that. I would want revenge on what made it happen. But I also am smart enough to know that I'm pretty comfortable here.
It would also help, I think, if that is the case, then it would help you where you could actually do something that would matter, which is what I've been harping on, which is the local and state level. The federal system is so
I was about to get to
irrevocably
that, yeah.
broken that we can't start unraveling this Gordian knot
Mhm.
because it will all just fall apart.
Well, and
Okay, well now we know where we need to put our efforts.
that's where the reach of these people, because Cash and Dan are so popular that even though they're government officials now, people will listen to them if their name pops up on the interwebs.
Mhm.
I can put Dan Bongino in the headline of this, and we will get 150 new views, I bet. And I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna end the title of this with Dan Bongino. Okay. And and if you made it this far, you know why. It's all you need to do at this point, if you don't want to just start, you know, pulling out the guillotines, right, is to say, hey, this guy, Dan and Cash said primary, and people would know what you're talking about because he's on the list or
Mhm.
she's on the list, and just go at it. And now once they're out of power, oh, we got this evidence. We got to get them out of power first and then get the evidence on them and take them out. Because if we do it all at once, I have a feeling it would be a complete and total crash of the entire nation. We're too big and multicultural and multi uh, system oriented to just take everybody out at once. We can't French Revolution this. We saw what happened during the French Revolution, right? So I would accept the approach of this is big, this is massive, and we're going to help it along the way, and then start throwing out shit like that's the person you want to primary. That's the person you want
Mhm.
to vote against. Oh, this person with all this money in this company, a slight boycott might be nice. That kind of stuff. Oh, here's an alternative company. The head of Coca-Cola is the problem. Hey, Pepsi's cool. That kind of stuff. Again, I'm just throwing out names. I don't know anything about the head of Coca-Cola or the head of Pepsi, but
I know Coca-Cola is horribly woke and they went in hard on the CRT DEI, but so who knows? But anyway, well, that is all we have for today. Got a little dark, got a little serious, but it can't be helped with this subject matter. Um, Hopefully we come out the other side a little brighter. In the meantime, if you need a break, go see Superman, and we will talk next time about uh, fiction some more, but how it relates because we're still talking relationships in Wheel of
oh
Time.
yes, yes. Who do we got next? Swan
Uh,
and Gareth
I know I wanted
Bryan.
to talk about them because they're more mature, and so that relationship is very different from some
Yeah,
of the others.
Nynaeve and Lan. Yeah.
But then also I think you wanted to talk about Matt and his two ladies.
Did we not?
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and double check,
I thought we
re-listen to our
talked about
last one.
them in the last one, but
I know we touched on it. Giggity. So we'll be talking relationships some more because it matters. It's how you make it through life, uh, and accentuate your positives and minimize your negatives is when you have good relationships. It's,
especially
that's
with
what
the
makes them
opposite
good.
sex
Yeah,
or the one you're attracted to. How about that?
there you go.
There you go.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all then.
Later.